Wondering what's the buzz? Then tune into Happy Hours for your dose of all that matters. The exclusive HR podcast by NHRDN in partnership with Timbre Media, podcaster for India Inc.
Welcome to Happy Hours. My name is Seetal, and today's episode is all about getting you inspired. And the reason you can be assured of this happening in the course of our podcast is because we've got one of the most respected, revered names when it comes to India Inc. and the creation of human capital for it. We're talking about Rajeev Dubey, 29 years with the Tatas, 16 with Mahindra Mahindra, where he is principal advisor HR. He's one of those leaders who manages to breathe life into words that otherwise just remain, relegated to PowerPoint presentations. Words we use to describe value, mission statements, culture in organizations, etc. But Rajeev Dubey knows exactly how to unpack some of these concepts. On today's episode, you can be treated to insights on leadership, the future of work. We're also going to try and make sense of the here and now. All of that coming up on Happy Hours with our special guest, Rajeev Dubey. Rajeev, thank you so much for making us some time on Happy Hours. Welcome to the show. And, this is a question that I think everyone is asking everyone else today. How is the lockdown treating you?
Thank you very much. You embarrassed me by what you said. But thank you. You also make my day. The lockdown has been a sort of scary, surrealistic, and yet an amazingly powerful experience. I would say that it has, in some very deep manner, connected me to myself and to those who are immediate members of my family in a way that perhaps never happened before for such a sustained period of time. I think it has connected me to myself and to my values and enabled me to search for purpose and connect me to my close family members. And that has, I think, given me some direction. I'm at a stage in my life where I'm sort of trying to redefine and research what my purpose is. And I think this lockdown has enabled me to do that. It has enabled me also to enjoy and find beauty in small things like just looking out, experiencing the breeze, the silence. Also a deep sense of gratitude for all that the universe is.
Purpose. It's interesting you bring that up right up front, Rajeev, because I had meant to ask you, I've heard this word being used even in the context of organizations. People want to be more purpose-driven given the changes that we witnessed on account of COVID-19 in recent times. But it's a word that can mean a lot of things. If you were to unpack it for us and help us understand how to discover what our own purpose is, what are the questions perhaps that one needs to ask oneself to derive the answer to that?
Yeah, for me, purpose really is what is it that I'm really looking for and that I would like to do, and which would give me a deep sense of joy and a sense of self-worth. It is, if you like, what is my dream? What is it that I really want to do? And want to do because at the end of the day, what will give me a sense of satisfaction, a sense of joy, a sense of being a whole person, a sense of being connected, so that when I look back, at my life, I could say, yes, I did something that was meaningful to me.
Right.
So that's what I mean by purpose. And it is, in a sense, trying to define or find the answer to the question, who am I?
Who am I? Yeah.
Again,
totally.
Maybe that's sounding a little esoteric, but one can unpack it. But to keep it simple, what is it that I really want? And why is it important that I should?
What has changed for you, Rajeev, as a person, as a professional in these last few weeks? What have you suddenly realized is also your responsibility as a person and professional?
Now, that's a really difficult question. I'll have to think. But I think what it has taught me is the immense power of adaptability, that the immense power of resilience. I'm the kind of person who just would not be able to stay put in any one place. I often used to say that the biggest punishment that you can give me is to say, relax, stay at home, don't do anything. Yeah. That would be the biggest punishment. And here, lo and behold, I have not stepped out of my flat since the, I think, 22nd of March.
Right.
And yet I have been able to find so many things that give me a great sense of joy and happiness. And I think, therefore, the resilience and the power of adaptability and the ability to find meaning in small things. We often think that you have to do big things to find meaning and joy. And yet, the realization that it is in very, very small things that in the moment, in the here and now, that life actually exists.
Rajeev, I was checking out an interview that you had done, I think, earlier this year, and you mentioned that life is a continuum of nows. And I thought that was interesting because we seem to be a people obsessed with the future, especially at a time like this. We can't wait to get it over with and get on with the future. But yes, it is important to heed the here and now so that the lessons that come out of this can be applied in the future. So how does one really unfixate from the past and also from the future and live the moment?
Yeah, well, first is, I think, to be intellectually aware and that the only reality is now. Because if you think about it, life is a continuum of nows, right? Because the past is the past. The future hasn't come. The only reality is the now. Now, since most of us are lost and thinking about our past or dreaming about the future, we forget to live in the present moment. And therefore, we lose the opportunity to really experience what life is. And that's what I meant by the here and now, that life is a continuum of nows. And if one can live each of these nows, then one can make an impact, because then one is living in the reality. One is sort of giving 100% of oneself into whatever one chooses to do in the moment. It could be, it always is a combination of being aware of possibilities and then acting on it. So it's awareness and action put together and in the moment, so that you are able to give 100% of yourself to the karma that you choose to do.
Yeah.
And therefore the power that you then bring, your full 100% of your power is channeled into the karma or the action that you have decided to do in the moment. And you're not losing energy by anxiety or fear or jealousy or anger, which are all the emotions that come when you're dreaming about the past or when you're trapped in the past or you're only thinking about the future. But if you are in the here and now, then you have no time or you have no ability of losing energy, because you're so focused on giving 100% of yourself to what you do.
Bottoms up.
So this is where I'm going to segue into the work context, Rajeev, because clearly here and now, leaders, CHROs even across organizations are perhaps faced with a challenge that they have never encountered in their lives on account of the multiple uncertainties. What are these challenges in your view?
So, now this question can be answered at two levels. One is at the sort of economic level, if you like, and the other one is at the personal level. And the two, of course, are very closely interconnected. So one, clearly that this is a time of uncertainty and fear, right? So that's one thing is clear. There is uncertainty, there is great fear. And there is always the danger that people get stuck in the victim syndrome, where you start looking at others to help you out and you stop taking responsibility for yourself. Whereas the time now is to take responsibility on what is it that we can do, and given that there is fear and given that there is uncertainty, right? So the four factors from a business continuity point of view, and I'll just quickly link all this up together. One, of course, is survival, so cash. Cash is king. The second is that it's finally people who you need to move you out of a situation, or to collect cash, or to spend it slowly, or whatever you do. It's all about people and how people processes are in your organization. Then, of course, there are issues connected with the supply chain. And finally, of course, covering all this is what could be called leadership behavior. Now, the leadership behavior, more than anything else, has to be one which comes from calmness and from not being agitated. So while a leader has, of course, to communicate and take decisions that reflect the reality, the leader also has to give hope. And the leader has to be very empathetic vis-a-vis all the ecosystem members that he or she is dealing with. And that truly requires the leader to operate from a calm and resolved inner space. And that calm and resolved inner space is not possible unless you have the ability to be in the here and now, totally. Because if you're a prisoner of your past, you will find solutions that are not relevant because you're not aware of the current reality, you're not aware of the possibilities. Whereas if you are in the here and now, you are aware of what the realities are, you're not stuck in your mental models that worked in the past, and you're open to all possibilities.
Right.
Plus, you're able to provide that calmness and that anchor which everyone else is looking to because they are all fearful, they are anxious, they are full of uncertainty. And that's where the leader has to come in. And if that leader is in the here and now, that leader can provide the three things that I talked about, which is to take decisions that reflect the reality, but at the same time to be able to give hope and to be empathetic towards the people who the leader is dealing with.
Here and now as a phrase has appeared quite often. But, I wanted to check with you, Rajeev. Here and now, right now is a very, like you said, uncertain and fearful time. What has kept you optimistic and motivated? What of this new normal you believe is actually a bunch of rays of hopes staring at us in the face?
So first, of course, is the sheer instinct for survival. You person cannot survive unless there is hope. So now we know that we are going through problems, but this is not the first time that an epidemic has hit the world.
Right.
So epidemics have come and yes, they have created havoc for some time, but then the world bounces back. That's the nature of existence. And so there is absolutely no doubt in my mind that with some time lag and with a lot of destruction in its trail, we will come back. So definitely there is hope. So we have been forced into a pause. Can we use this pause to reboot, reinvent, and reignite so that we are able to survive right now, so that we are able to reimagine what a future could be, which will be full of challenges, but also full of opportunity? Can we position ourselves as people and as organizations to be able to take advantage of the new possibilities that will emerge in terms of both supply and demand, and take advantage of the tide, be ready for it, have the aspirations after having made sure that by sort of rebooting, we have re-engineered existing processes to make them more efficient, to make them more effective. Then we have reinvented, that means that we have tapped into the power of innovation to redefine what kind of products may be required, what kind of services will be required, what will be the forces of supply and demand. And then to reignite means to have the aspiration and to have the energy and to have the hope so that when the tide turns, we are there to take full advantage of it. That's my view. I'm generally speaking an optimistic person, perhaps sometimes unrealistically optimistic. But I do believe that unless one has hope, unless one has a belief that we shall overcome, it's difficult to survive. So
absolutely.
And survival and the ability to be resilient, to embrace fear, and then, by embracing it, manage it or overcome it. These are the requirements of the day. But you can't just sit and dream about it. You have to convert these attitudes and these views finally into action.
But
absolutely. The action is such that it will have to be of a kind which is very agile, where you experiment a lot, learn from your mistakes, and then keep going forward. And above all, where you keep your team members motivated, where you work well with your team. Now, you may well say, okay, but what about the fact that many teams won't remain with the same composition? Yes, that is also true. That is also true. So that's part of the problem. But how do you handle it with empathy? How do you share the pain? Or how is it that, what is it that you communicate? And are you doing it with empathy? So these are very, very difficult things, but they can be done. And it's not only what you do that is important, it is also how you do it that is very important. So the why, the what, and the how, all three will be severely tested now. And this is where I think above all, the current situation is one which is going to be very demanding of the leadership. And the leadership behavior is going to be in most cases one of the more crucial determinants of whether an organization is going to survive and is going to then bounce back when things improve, because things have to improve.
So if you were to look into your crystal ball, Rajeev, at the future of work, I mean, we've been talking about the future of work for many years now, but the COVID-19 outbreak has clearly proved to be some sort of a force, or had a force multiplier effect. Most organizations are already in the middle of their digital transformation journeys, and that has just got an extra fillip. So what do you see? What is the future of work given the recent happenings?
Yeah, for sure. Worker and workplace, these are the three dimensions that we have been discussing when we talk about the future of work. And all three clearly are going to change. Now, we don't quite know the exact dimensions or the exact contours of what these three will look like, but there are some trends that are very clear. So one, of course, there will be a lot more stress on harnessing the power of digital and harnessing the power of virtual. And that, of course, is going to be true. But that will also require then greater human connection, greater awareness of what the human psyche needs. So you have to combine the power of technology with great and deep human connection and an understanding of what people are looking for, the basic human needs. So one often tends to get carried away by pure technology, forgetting that when we talk about digital transformation, above all, we are talking about a high level of change management, which involves people. So I think a huge awareness and sensitivity and empathy towards human feelings, the importance of teamwork, the huge importance of distributed leadership, and therefore, to create trust. All this is going to become really, really, really important. So I think the work then will require different skills, but also very different mindsets, and a huge amount of understanding of basic human nature, so that teams can work well and we can have what is known as distributed leadership. Also, I think providing what is called psychological safety to people in organizations is going to become very, very important. So this is a bit on work. I think, of course, it is in the context of maybe very different kind of demand. I personally think that, fundamental changes will take place in the nature of demand in many, many industries. For example, clearly one is travel. Then clearly, I think, so I see that travel. Then our attitude towards healthcare, our attitude towards many things that we have neglected in this country in terms of the rural countryside, in terms of food security. I think global supply chains will be redefined. So there are all kinds of changes that will take place, but essentially it will be more and more driven by technology, without any doubt, and therefore it will require people who have different skills and who have actually a different attitude towards learning. So, learning, unlearning, relearning, all this will become very, very important. I think the gig economy is going to really become very, very important. Now, the gig economy brings with it its own set of challenges. See, while on the one hand, it is providing you skill which doesn't have to remain with you all the time. There are a lot of questions connected with, for example, social security of the gig workforce. How do you do dispute resolution? How do you create the loyalty, the correct amount of loyalty and engagement that is required? How do you handle in any organization workforce which is made up of a small core of permanent people? Then there are people who are on fixed term employment, there are gig workers. So there are very different kinds of people with different tenures, with a different attitude towards each other and towards the organization. And it's a very big challenge on how you get these different kinds of workers to work together as a team. So that's what's going to happen to work and worker and workplace. Of course, I think clearly this work from home is definitely going to become more and more important. I don't think it'll ever substitute. But and again, it'll have different industries, different sectors will have different levels of work from home possibilities.
Right.
So
absolutely.
So for clearly, I don't think manufacturing will certainly require people to be on the shop floor. But do they require the same level of people? Will there be more automation? And the answer to all that is yes. So then what happens? Do you have large amounts of people getting thrown out of jobs? I think this is a huge, big challenge right now. That there will be loss of jobs. And I think it's going to be a huge problem right now. Then this whole question of what in India we can call migrant labor or labor that is, sustains the total economy, because, the organized sector is only, I think, 6 or 7% of the total workforce. So 93% of the workforce in India is unorganized. It is the workforce that doesn't have permanent employment, that doesn't have access to social security. So it's a huge, huge problem. And, we have to find ways of tackling it. And I think it's going to be one of the major tasks of society to find the way in which we handle what is right now called the informal workforce. So it's often also called, it is migrant labor. It's huge. A lot of it is migrant labor, not all of it is. So we have to find. So therefore, work, worker, workplace. All these three are going to get redefined, and the pace of change definitely has been accelerated by COVID-19. Now, I think that some of the changes will be permanent. Some of the changes may not be that permanent.
Right.
So, to imagine that the brave new world will be completely different in every form may not be true, but I definitely think there'll be a fair amount of permanent changes. I don't quite know what they will be.
Wondering what's the buzz? Then tune into Happy Hours for your dose of all that matters. The exclusive HR podcast by NHRDN in partnership with Timbre Media, podcaster for India Inc.